Welcome my students and viewers. In previous class, I started indifference curve analysis, and in a very short period of time, I just covered just one portion of indifference curve analysis. Today, I am going to explain another portion of indifference analysis, which I could not complete in yesterday's class. Secondly, just a few words I have to say to the viewers as well as the students, that these classes are virtually a race against time, because the exam is scheduled to be sometime in May, and this is March has started, so I have just only 2 months. So I'll be trying my best to just brushing up the next syllabus, and I won't be able to cover any chapter in a more elaborate and more extensive way. So extensive explanation of all these things I'll be doing on YouTube later on, and just I will make separate videos for all the things in a very extensive way. But these classes are in a very hasty process, and I just trying to cover up all the things whichever is being given in the syllabus. So this is what I have to say to the viewers as well to my students. And yesterday I started indifference curve analysis. What is indifference curve? What is its properties, as well as how the consumer attains its equilibrium through indifference curve analysis, that I explained yesterday. In today's class, I am going to explain this income effect, substitution effect, and price effect of indifference curve analysis. Just starting with this income effect. In indifference curve analysis, in last class, I had explained that this price line shifts in a parallel way under two conditions. When prices of these two goods remain constant and only income changes, then this entire price line shifts in a parallel way. Secondly, when income remaining constant and Px and Py, just prices of these two goods changes in the same proportions, then this price line shifts in a just parallel way, either rightward or leftward. In this class, we are just concerned with income effect. So prices of these two goods are remaining constant, only income is changing. So this price line is just shifting in a parallel way, and on each budget line we have a point of equilibrium, and if these point of equilibria are joined by a line, we get the income consumption curve. These are the point of equilibrium, and when these point of equilibrium are joined by a line, we get the income consumption curve. So income consumption curve traces out the effect of income change on quantity demanded. So in this class, we shall investigate that when income changes, what happens to the demand of these both commodities. Secondly, income effect may be positive or negative. Income effect is positive if with the rise in income, consumption of that good increases. Income effect is negative when with the rise in income, the consumption of good decreases. So when income effect is positive, goods are normal, and when income effect is negative, goods are inferior. So this is how just we differentiate between normal and inferior goods. So it is positive when if with a rise in income, the consumption increases. Consumption also increases. Now we are having various shapes of ICC. This one shape says that when this ICC curve is a backward bending towards y-axis, then this says that in that case x happens to be inferior and y is a normal commodity, if ICC happens to be of this shape. Just in a converse shape, if ICC is of this shape, then this explains that x happens to be of normal good and y is an inferior good. Now here we are having three ICCs of just different slopes. This ICC, extreme left, explains that x is a necessary good and y is a luxury good. If ICC just originates from origin and it is a straight line or just a linear, then it says that x and y both are normal commodities. And this ICC, if it is just tilted towards x-axis, then this explains that x is luxury and y is a necessary commodity. And these two ICC just taken together, this explains, this ICC is explaining that Y is a normal commodity and X is an inferior commodity, and this is just reverse of this case. For this ICC, X happens to be normal and Y is an inferior commodity. So depending upon the nature of commodity, ICC takes various shapes, and these shapes are found in indifference curve analysis. Now, with ICC or the income effect, there is another concept, angel curve, that I am going to explain. Now, angel curve, Angel was a German and he studied the effect of change in income on the demand of a commodity, and whatever relation he got, that is known as the Angel's law, and when this law is just plotted, it becomes angel curve. Now, what this says, the change in the pattern of consumption expenditure. Now, of what kind of change is? This change shows that for the necessities, rather food and other necessities, when income increases, expenditure on these necessities diminishes, and when income increases, expenditure on the luxuries rises. This is what Angel law says. So the change in the pattern of consumption expenditure, that is decline in the proportion of income spent on food and other necessities, and increase in the proportion of income spent on luxuries. This is change in pattern with the rise in income of families, is called Angel's law. So this is what Angel's law says. It says that when income increases, our proportion of income spent on food diminishes, and the proportion of income spent on the luxurious commodities, it increases. This is what Angel's law said. This angel curve is derived from the income consumption curve. Just we have seen from ICC, angel curve is found. For normal commodity, angel curve is a straight upward sloping curve. This upward sloping angel curve is for normal goods, and depending upon the nature of commodity, shape of angel curve changes. Here we are having different shapes. For necessities, angel curve happens to be of convex nature, like this. For luxuries, angel curve happens to be of concave nature, concave. And for inferior commodities, angel curve is a backward bending curve. And for the neutral goods, the goods which are insensitive to any change in demand, those goods are called neutral goods. So for neutral goods, angel curve happens to be of vertical nature. So these are the 4-5 shapes of the angel curve depending upon the nature of the commodities. This type of this angel curve explains that this relates to the necessities. This concave explains the existence of luxuries. This backward bending angel curve explains the inferior commodity, and just the vertical straight line on the base, it explains the neutral goods. So this is what about angel curve in a very nutshell and a very shorter period of time. So this is what angel curve says. Now we are going to see substitution effect. Substitution effect, when price of any commodity increases, then his real income diminishes. Conversely, when the price of any commodity diminishes, real income of the consumer increases. Now, this substitution effect explains that when there is a price variation, either increase or decrease, his real income changes. Now, if real income is kept constant at the initial level, then what happens to the demand? And any change in demand in that case would be only due to change in the relative prices of both the commodities. So, for finding substitution effect, real income of the commodities are kept constant, and for keeping this real income constant, we have two versions of substitution effect. One is given by the Hicks and another is given by the Slutsky. Hicks uses compensating variation in income to reduce the real income, and the Slutsky uses cost difference to reduce the real income, so that substitution effect could be separated. Now, this substitution effect explains change in quantity demanded due to change in relative prices alone, real income remaining constant. This is what I have spoken right now. that when price changes, real income changes. By keeping real income constant and then observing that what happens to the demand due to change in the relative price, this is what substitution effect explains. For explaining substitution effect, we have two versions, Hicksian version and Slutsky version. This diagram relates to Slutsky and this is Hicksian. Now, Hicks uses compensating variation in income to separate or to just explore this substitution effect, and Slutsky uses cost difference. Come on this diagram. Here initial price line is PL and initial equilibrium is E1. Now, if the price of X commodity falls, price line shifts on x-axis from PL to PL1, and obviously now the new equilibrium would be somewhere on this PL1. To find this substitution effect, the real income of the consumer is reduced in such a way that he is again pushed back on the initial IC. Once again, when the price of X has reduced, its real income has increased, and as a result, this price line PL has shifted to PL1. Now, to separate this substitution effect, what has to be done? This new price line has to be reduced or suppressed below in such a way that we are on the initial IC, and that we see that if this PL1 comes in a parallel way in the lower portion, then it becomes A1B1, and A1B1 is tangent to IC on point E2. So the movement from E1 to E2 stands for substitution effect, and in quantitative terms, X1, X2 stands for the substitution effect, and this is only due to the changes in the compensating variation in income, and that was given by Hicks. Now, what Slutsky says, initial price line PL, initial point of equilibrium E1. If price of X reduces, this price line PL shifts to PL1. Somewhere new equilibrium would be on this PL1. Just to separate substitution effect, what Slutsky suggests, that this new price line has to be brought below in such a way that the consumer finds itself on the initial combination, mind it, initial combination of goods. So this PL1 in a parallel way has come below, and it just passes through the initial point of equilibrium E1 and it becomes AB. So AB is the cost difference, and here was AB was the compensating variation. Now AB is this AB is the cost difference, and new equilibrium point would be somewhere on this AB price line, and it happens to be on this IC2. We had started from IC1 and now new equilibrium is on IC2. So the movement from E1 to E2 stands for the substitution effect, and on this x-axis, this X1, X2 is substitution effect given by Slutsky. So this substitution effect is of Slutsky, and this is Hicksian substitution effect. So this is what substitution effect in a very short period of time. Now we shall see price effect finally. When price of one commodity changes and price of another commodity remaining constant, then the price line will move on the axis of good whose prices have reduced. In these all examples, we have assumed that price of X falls, and then we have explained this PCC. This PCC just traces out the price effect of price change on demand, his test and income remaining constant. If PCC is upward sloping, good X is in a relatively inelastic, that is elasticity is less than 1. This is being explained here. If PCC slopes straightway upward, then it says that commodity X, whose price has reduced, is inelastic in nature, its elasticity is less than 1. Now, if PCC slopes downward and price of X has reduced, this says, here it explains that when price of X has reduced, the quantity demanded of X and Y both have increased. Though price of only X has decreased, but on account of that and his real income has increased, so the consumer has increased the consumption of both of the commodities. That's why his elasticity is less than 1. In this case, when the price of X has reduced, what has happened? The consumer is increasing the consumption of commodity X and diminishing the commodity, the very consumption of Y. Look what is happening. So gradually, the consumption of X is increasing and the consumption of Y is diminishing. This says that commodity X is relatively elastic, its elasticity is greater than 1. In this case, when the price of X has reduced, PCC becomes a horizontal straight line. This explains that due to fall in the price of X, the purchase of commodity Y remains constant, and only due to fall in price of X, in the same proportion, that is in the proportion of price has reduced, in the same proportion this consumption of X has increased. So proportionate change in price as well as the proportionate change in demand of X is exactly same. So this PCC explains that good X happens to be of unitary elastic, and this one, when commodity X happens to be a given good, that is inferior commodity, inferior good, then in such case, this PCC would be backward bending shape. This becomes PCC and this PCC conforms to the given good. So these are the various shapes of the PCCs. I have explained income effect, substitution effect, price effect, and finally in few minutes, I am going to explain that price effect is the very sum total of income and substitution effect that I am explaining right now. In consumer's behavior, we have a Slutsky equation. That equation decomposes price effect into two effects, substitution effect and income effect. And this Slutsky equation says that price effect is the sum total of substitution effect and income effect. This is being shown in this diagram. Initial price line is P1 and consumer is on initial equilibrium at point E1. Now, assume that the price of X has reduced, and as a result, this price line PL has shifted to PL1, this dotted line. This dotted line is the shifting of initial price line PL to PL1, and in the new circumstances, when the price of X has reduced, new point of equilibrium is E3. So movement from E1 to E3 or increase in demand from X1 to X3, this is our price effect. Total price effect on account of the fall in the price of X. Now this price effect can be decomposed into substitution effect and income effect. To separate substitution effect, real income of the consumer is reduced in the form of compensating variation in income in such a way that PL1 shifts downward in a parallel way and it becomes AB. And this new price line, which has shifted downward in a parallel way, is tangent to the initial IC1 at point E2. So the movement from E1 to E2, or the extension in demand from X1 to X2, stands for the substitution effect, because this is the change in demand as a result of change in relative prices alone, relative income remaining constant, because the income of consumer has been kept constant at the initial level. So this X1, X2 is our substitution effect. Now, just to finally find the income effect, what the income of the consumer was withdrawn, if it is given back to the consumer will jump from point E1 to E3, and this movement from E2 to E3, and this movement from E2 to E3 is the income effect, or in quantitative terms from X to X3, this is our income effect. So X1, X2 substitution effect, X2, X3 income effect, and X1, X3 price effect. So X1, X3 is the sum total of 2, X1, X2 plus X2, X3. This X1, X2 is already substitution effect, X2, X3 is the income effect, and this is how this in a Hicksian version, this price effect could be decomposed in the form of substitution effect and income effect, and this decomposition of price effect into substitution and income is being known as the Slutsky equation. So in today's class, this is what, and so this is all for today in difference curve analysis, and I have already told to the viewers as well as students that I am not going in detail in this class, because time is the the severe constant before me. So whatever I thought that would be useful for the NET and other exams, that I have explained done in the class. And once again, to inform the students that online classes are going to start from 15th of May. Positively, I will start it, and there I will everything just cover up in a very extensive way. And in these classes, I am just brushing up the entire syllabus and giving it a glance. So this is what about the indifference curve analysis in a very concise way. Tomorrow we shall start production and cost, and just before starting production and cost, I will explain elasticity of demand too in the tomorrow's class. For today, this is all about indifference curve analysis. And on the top of everything, if any student, any viewer has any problem regarding these things, you do ask me questions. I will be happier to receive the questions and in answering the questions in the class. And I am expecting very much questions from the students. This is my own nature. So this is what for today. We shall meet in next video. Thanks.